Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen. We're here with comic Michael Lee. Michael Lee, how the hell are you?
I'm great, Brian. How are you?
Doing so good. Thank you so much for coming on. And I know I follow you at your Michael Lee __, at least a couple underscores on there on Instagram, but also you're pretty big on Facebook. You are friend Mike Lee. And so even if somebody doesn't accept your friend request, they can follow you.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So let us know what you're doing. I know you got is it Crying Buddha Mike?
Yeah, I run a mic on Wednesdays in general, unless, I'm busy with work at Hunters Point Community Park in Long Island City at 12 p.m. on Wednesdays. It's just my own mic that I run because I had off on Wednesdays. I used to run one of the mics over at near a comedy club on Wednesdays, but they're not letting people back in right now. So I just decided, hey, I'm off on Wednesdays. Let me just keep it going because mics, there are plenty now, but I kind of got nothing to do on Wednesdays, so I figured let me just do an early one.
Are you near the Pepsi Cola sign that I see so much? That the iconic Pepsi Cola sign, or is that something else?
That's something else. That's a different park. That's Gantry Plaza State Park, and that's where we had my second show that I produce called Comedy in Long Island City 2 weeks ago. But the one that we tried doing last week got shut down by the park employees. So we actually we had to move it over to Hunters Point Community Park where I post my open mics. It was just kind of like in the back pocket because no one really bothers us there. And everyone actually walked like almost a mile to the park to watch the show.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, the things they'll do for comedy. And I guess, you're the person who can speak to this the best, and that's you were a kind of a frontline healthcare worker. And how does that inform your view of precautions people are taking that are impacting comedy clubs? Like, do you think that comedy clubs should be a little bit more open than they are? Or are you like, yeah, I think it's best that they stay shut down for a while longer?
I wouldn't say I'm like the ultimate expert on this, but I know like there are gyms that are open, there are restaurants that are open, and I think the main problem with it is the laughter, and we don't know what kind of vents they have in their clubs that can help get rid of all the particles in the air. I think they're just not really, the government rather is not really educated on how to solve this problem. So
yeah, and if they have ventilation systems like world class, recently installed ventilation systems that kicks out the particle air and pipes in new fresh air, it could be fine. But those things probably should be done on a case by case basis where these people are actually going to the comedy club, because when people are seeing Michael Lee on stage, they're going to laugh their ass off, and that's particles, man.
Well, yeah, it's particles, and I feel like it's good. I feel like it's good when people are close together. Like, it's a very communal experience. I just think it works better when people are closer together, and I guess they're also worried that they're violating social distancing rules when you pack people together. So I don't know. I think for them it's kind of touchy, and at the same time I don't run a club, so I don't know, if you space people out. Comic is good, obviously. Still going to get laughs, but I think that's something that everyone's pondering, and I think they have a plan. I think all the clubs have a plan. I just don't think that the governor is budging on that right now.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're doing that thing where they're doing targeted shutdowns now, or targeting lockdowns down by neighborhood, and they're saying that that's kind of a problem where I think on one dividing line between one zip code and another, there was like a mall that got shut down, and there's a competing mall across the street that was allowed to stay open, and that's really fucking with people's business. And so is it just kind of sad that we can't be a little bit more ad hoc or case by case basis when they need to do? It's nicer doing these localized shutdowns instead of the uniform shutdowns, but it's just not fair to comics like Michael Lee, who could have 100 to 1,000 people packed in tight, laughing their asses off, sending particles.
I wish I had that many followers.
You're like, dude, you're like, I send out particles, man. What the hell, man? It's like I'm a victim of my own success, right? Because you're like, dude, somebody who's not getting laughs, that person can stay on stage. Who gives a fuck?
I said that myself. I'm like, well, you could just pack the clubs with open, with the as an open mic, and you're not going to get a lot of laughs in there, so it's pretty safe.
Especially if there's other comics in the audience. They're not listening. They're not paying attention. They're
Oh
doing their own
yeah,
fucking shit. And then
yeah.
how are you kind of making your mic a Crying Buddha? How are you making sure that that is a place where comedians want to go to test material because people are actually going to pay attention?
Well, we have a repeat group of comics that come, and they're all very serious and into their craft, I think.
Okay.
And I think the earlier you get up, the more serious you are about it. Because this mic is at 12, and there's not a lot of comics that are up at that time. I don't think, at least, or they're working their day job. But this group just seems to keep coming back. It's pretty much the same group of people. So everyone just wants to listen. Everyone's kind of there, just focused and listening. And like I try my best to not be pushy about that, because I know with the Laughing Buddha mic, they had a rule where you can't look at your phone and you can't look at your notes, while the person's on stage. I mean, I think everyone's pretty respectful at my mic. I kind of lay that down. Um, and I always tell them, you guys got to be respectful of the people, because we're still in a residential area. I don't want you heckling people that walk by.
Yeah.
That's really my only rule.
Do you got
Besides,
the mic set up, or are you doing just kind of shouting to people like you're a cult
I
leader?
got the amp. I
Okay.
got the amp. Yeah. So if somebody
Nice.
say wants to sing and wants to sing a song or a funny song or whatever, I always just say, just turn off the mic. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna sing at the top of your lungs. We don't need to be kicked out. And it's a really nice little park. It's very, very small. People, when I'm there, when running the mic, there's people eating lunch. So I'm not trying to get kicked out.
And is some of the harassment that people are getting from the cops, or some of these shows being shut down because they're choosing to use amplification systems, and like
It really
it's just
depends.
okay.
It really depends on the park. Like at Gantry Park, the reason why I got shut down was because I didn't have a permit, and the park employees. That area is a little more bougie. Like it's you know the the apartment complexes pretty much surround that area, and everybody in all those residents. Um, I guess the park employees are more inclined to do their job, because it's like a high class area, you know.
Nice.
So yeah, so I guess whereas like I did talk to a park employee afterwards, and he was like, yeah, if you go to one of the other parks, I don't think they'll really mess with you as much. I was like, okay. So yeah, but the Gantry Park Plaza one, we got some great photos. It's on my show page, which is Comedy in NYC on Instagram, and I always like choosing places with nice locations too. But the
Yeah,
one before it,
photographing well is really a big thing, because it's like, you see some of these great photographs of these big shows, on Tiny Cupboard or whatever, and you're like, man, that looks like the place to be. Let me go to that.
oh for sure, they run great shows over there, and the one I first ran was over at Flushing Meadow Corona Park, right by the Unisphere, that big globe. I don't know if you're.
Yeah, I saw pictures of that too. Yeah, I used to work in Flushing. That was a trip.
Oh, really? That's cool. Yeah. So that area meant a lot to me, because I would always pass by it when I visited my grandpa. So there wasn't a huge turnout for that one, because I guess it was the location, and people just didn't want to show up. That location is so big. So
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay. And, it just didn't seem like an area that was prime for just stand-up comedy. So I said, okay, it's probably the location. And I was actually right. Moved it over to Gantry, had a nice little turnout, maybe like 20 people 2 weeks ago. And then more people came to the one last week. And that's when they shut us down. They were like, "Oh, you're promoting something. You're promoting something. You're making a profit." I said, "It's a free show.
Yeah.
I'm not making any profit. I'm not. I don't even have a tip bucket. I'm paying the comics out of my own pocket." Yeah,
Wow.
well, you still can't do it. You still can't do it. I'm like, come on.
Do you know what
So
my day? Yeah, do you know what my day job is? Should I invoke my day job? First of all, I'm a frontline worker, so go fuck yourself. And second of all, I make more money at my day job than you do, so shut the fuck up.
well,
I'm
I
not
actually
trying to
did.
turn a profit on my comedy show.
I actually did pull that card
Yes.
sheepishly. I was like, well, look, I work at the hospital, and I said I work at the hospital not too far from here,
Yeah.
and I'm a frontline worker. We just want to put on a comedy show to give people some free entertainment. Still wouldn't budge. I had a supervisor. The supervisor came over, and supervisor was like, "Hey, I would watch this too if you had a permit." I'm like, "Go fuck yourself." No,
Yeah.
you wouldn't.
But I love the fact that now you're kind of, you're doing the mental calculus of where should I put a show. I want something that has the iconic background so the pictures look good, but I don't want it to be too far. I don't want it to be too high class or I'm going to get roused by the cops. I don't want to have permit issues. And I guess real quick, that kind of dovetails with one of your interests, which is underground New York hip hop. And
Yeah,
so, like, you probably are like a showrunner back in the day. Like, where the fuck can we put a show in the coolest spot possible that won't get roused by the cops?
yeah. I mean, underground hip hop, like that's that's one of my favorite genres of music. Like I love, like I have a bunch of friends that kind of just send me like screenshots of what they're listening to, and I love discovering like new underground artists that I hadn't heard of, or they've been around for a while, and then you like an album, and then you just want to keep digging for what else
Yeah,
they have,
yeah.
and that's also I feel like the same thing with comics. My buddy Jake Velasquez, who runs his own show, Penthouse Comedy, which is
Yeah, him and Shafi, right?
yeah, great lineup. I
Nice.
had Shafi on my show last week, and he just crushed it, man.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Jake and Shafi are just rocking and rolling. They're just putting on a big show with the big old names. And I know Shafi's got a couple different shows, and I think his locations are pretty pimp too. He's got that iconic Central Park show with that nice, beautiful archway structure in the background. I like that.
yeah, the Cedar Fountain or something. Yeah,
Yeah, whatever that is, that's fucking
yeah.
pimp.
But Jake actually put me on to Nick Griffin. I don't know, like I didn't
Yeah,
know who he was at all. I was like,
yeah,
who? And I just did my research. I was like, this guy's been killing for like 18, 19, 20 years. I was like, oh, okay. So I listened to his latest album, and I was like, I just got to get more of this guy.
yeah,
I just been looking for him. So that's kind of like what I want. I just want to keep working, keep pushing along, and eventually, hopefully, I can build a following, and people will want to dig in the crates and like look for like other things that I've done or other, other things that I've done. But hip hop is definitely like a huge influence on the stand up and the way I want to run my shows. And, I mean, it's not like we have a DJ in the back, but I like making the flyers look like I want to make it look like an event.
yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. I'll do it yourself because then you can control the quality and the point of view of these comics. And if you put them on their show, maybe you're going to be put on their show at some point in the future. And yeah, I listened to the Pitchfork had something. The music site had something called the Ones or whatever, where they would aggregate all the newest underground hip hop or whatever for the week. And I've never heard of any of these people. And I'm just fucking like I'm loving all this shit. And you look
yeah,
at some of these names and you're like, I can't believe I like this fucking song, but he's using a badass sample that I've heard of, and it's like
uh-huh.
fuck yeah. And I love the fact you're talking about the discovery. It's like you're almost the pitchfork of comedy. You're going around and you're getting these comics who want to polish up their act, and you're putting them on, and you're like, I'm going there to see Michael Lee, and then you're turning me on to people like Shafi Hussein, and that's fucking badass.
Yeah. I'm not really trying to get people that aren't on a lot of shows, because the thing is, if you get a lot of people, if you try to book a lineup that with comics that are on like have like credits or TV credits, chances are they're going to drop out.
Yeah.
It's because
I
they're
love that.
busy.
You're fucking right, dude.
They're busy. Someone just actually dropped out of the show tonight, so now I have to find somebody else. So
I've had a comic drop off my schedule today while I was talking to you.
huh, there
I
you
got a
go.
direct message. I mean, I have like 15 comics today, so I don't, I kind of build this into the thing, and you probably do the same, where you're like, all right, well, we got 10 spots, let's book 12 spots, and a couple of them are going to flake out anyway.
Well, I tend to keep the shows like an hour and 15, an hour and 20 at most. I think anything longer than like an hour and a half, you're asking a lot of people just to
Yeah,
sit and watch, especially out in the cold. um, but
yeah,
the goal is to kind of just book comics that I've met along the way that I think are funny and give a chance to, because I don't know if you know Sarah Cooper. Name
oh
drop.
sure,
She actually booked me on my first show last August at her and Nikki McCallum used to
yeah,
do a
yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah. Nikki McCallum on, she's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they used to do a show called "You're So Brave," and
Yeah.
that was at Poco Bar. And like one of my goals was always like when I started like 4 years ago, again after I quit like I don't know 10 years ago, because I didn't really finish the craft of this. I said, okay, it's this year. I have to get booked on something, even if it's a bar show. And like she saw me, Sarah was with her husband. She saw me just I guess walking people into this other show in Brooklyn, this bar show. And she goes, "Oh, do you want to do the show?" Because
That,
we'd seen each other at Mike's, and she's working the craft just like all of us.
yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And she put me on the show, and I was like, she didn't have to.
Yeah.
I don't have any credits, so it's like I want to kind of pay that forward and put comics in who just really haven't had like any consistent exposure.
Yeah.
So
And I think
that's kind of the point of my show.
yeah, and I think that's something that I kind of can vibe with a little bit because it's like, you book somebody or if you get a big name and they want money and you're like, well, I'm going to give them a longer spot to be worth that money. It's like if they cancel, I could add three comics in there for your longer slot, and you're not three times funnier than the guests I have on. Like Michael Lee is just as funny as any of these fucking big names I can have on, and it's like he's not going to fucking flake out on my show. And so
Yeah.
the quality of comedy is probably there, and you're giving the time to people who appreciate it and will take the time and run with it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you book, I guess it's insurance. When you book those big names, like they have a following, it kind of ensures that they're going to come to the show. But then you have these other comics that just, for whatever reason, they're not being booked as much as they'd like.
Yeah.
But they're going to be professional. They're going to show up on time. They're going to do their set. They're going to do it to the best of their ability, and that's the show. So that's like I said, that's really why I wanted to make the show because when you just book too many big names and then you throw yourself on there. I mean, yeah, it can up your game. I'm sure being around great comics can up your game, but I don't know, just not at that level yet.
Yeah. And I guess like when you're able to go indoors in the future with your comedy show, are you anticipating adding any hip hop elements like a DJ? Because I think some of these comedy shows pitch a DJ or something. I
They
don't know
do
how
actually have,
how they
yeah.
do it, but yeah.
There's a few of them that actually I think do have something like that, like a DJ or like a playlist or something. But I don't know. I mean, that would have to be like a much bigger show. I don't think I would do that so much as I just like. I mean, I grew up on Def Jam,
Yeah.
Def Comedy Jam, and shows like that. But I don't think I would do that at this point unless it was like on a grand stage.
Have you ever rapped in your show? And
No,
do you think comedy rap is corny?
no. I used to think the whole music comedy was garbage, but now I'm like, hey, like that's a skill too. I mean, if you can put a rhyme together and the people laugh, I mean, it is what it is.
Oh no,
But
it's incredibly hard because then they need, musical comedy needs to think of a new joke for every refrain or hook, and so that's
mhm.
that's just packing in a lot of jokes. It's just that fucking comedy rap, always just like even the what's that big Hamilton, even
Yeah,
Hamilton rapping seemed a little bit corny to me.
yeah.
Like
I
anybody
have not
rapping
seen it.
except for like back in the day, like the best rappers in the history of time, they're gonna fucking trounce any fucking historical rap that fucking Hamilton's bringing, right?
Hmm. Hmm. I mean that I actually little side note. Actually, in high school, I was kind of dabbling in hip hop. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a rapper. And I still have my old rhyme books, and
Yes.
it's fucking awful. It's
Yes.
fucking
Can
awful.
you post those, or do you have too much pride? Do you serve the comedy, or do you serve your own ego? Are you worried that it would shatter your pride if people laughed at at your younger self?
Oh yeah, they would laugh at it. They wouldn't laugh with me. So I that's not something I would show.
You want to be laughed with and not laughed at.
Yeah. So yeah, that's not something that I intend to put out, but I still have them, and I just sometimes I'll read them every once in a while and be like, oh,
I at least
you
think
getting
there's
this out to your fucking high school friends? Oh. Hey, what do you think of this?
You mean a girl saw this? My lord.
Oh,
But I really think that you could take a lyric or two and make fun of it in a way that makes your current self look pretty enlightened. Like even finding a kernel of cool, oh, that was something I said. I mean, it's totally hacky and corny, but I should really take that lyric from 10 years ago and make that my life philosophy or something.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but I do have like, there's just something about like hip hop news or that I find funny because the culture can be a little like over the top sometimes, especially with like the violence and the spending, the money, the exuberant spending of money, and the drama, the baby mama drama. So it's like there's always there's something there that I always try to pick at, even if it's like with that rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine. I don't know if you remember him.
Oh, I was just listening to him before I came on. I love the videos.
So it's like I read that over the summer the judge gave him a choice of going home or to the witness protection program, which I found hilarious because you look at his face. I mean, how could he survive the witness protection program?
I totally agree, but then it's just like, how do you put that into an act? That's just it's so sad that sometimes you're like, well, I really want to talk about this little hip hop nugget, but putting that in the act with other things like, oh, I work in healthcare or whatever, it can be kind of jarring, and of course, it could be quickly dated if nobody knows who Tekashi 6ix9ine is in 5 years,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, who knows? I mean, he's the biggest troll. I'm surprised he's not dead.
Yes. Well, by the time this episode comes out, he could be. So, Michael Lee, thank you so much for coming on. I know we follow you. You're here on Facebook. You are your friend Mike Lee. On Instagram, you're Michael Lee with a bunch of underscores, and also the Comedy in LIC. Is that your only other Instagram comedy page?
Yeah, the Comedy in LIC, and the Crying Buddha Mike. I'm trying to push that. We're gonna do that until it starts snowing. I mean, I know comics will come out. People may not come out. Comics will come out. They don't care.
Get your fucking snowshoes on, comics. You still need to polish your act, right?
Exactly. And they're so much better than Zooms, in my opinion. Just a live comedy is just so much better than a Zoom. I mean, Zooms, people, I'm not shitting on Zooms. They're different,
Yeah, so, and as long as you have an attentive audience of comics, I really think that you could do it year round, man. Those motherfuckers would strap on their snowshoes for a Michael Lee show.
Oh, I hope so. God willing, Trying to build the following, man.
Oh, dude, he's a frontline worker who's given back in both health and also comedy. So, Michael Lee, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.